Okay, it's Catalyst with Amanda Reiman. This one is brand new. So let's just quickly take folks through what we think the thesis is, Amanda. Catalyst, what does that mean?
Okay, so I think the thesis is that the legalization of cannabis and all of the press and attention that has been dedicated to it in the process and the aftermath is an opportunity to be a jumping off point to revitalize and reimagine other progressive social movements that are touched by this phenomena of cannabis.
All right,
So we're going to talk about them.
here we go, diving into intersectionality. And first one up is environmentalism. Why is this first up, and how is this? How can cannabis be used as a catalyst to talk about environmentalism?
Well, I think one of the reasons it's first up is because our planet is dying, and it is pretty dire. And all of the things that we thought were working, like recycling and all of these lovely feel-good approaches to environmentalism, we're finding really are not giving us any long-term results. And so I think that now we're opening the conversation up to larger paradigms such as food production and the way that businesses operate. I saw an article this morning that Organic Valley is now claiming to be the largest food company completely off the grid in the world. So they have taken their operations completely off grid. So I think that it's a really good time now that we are building a cannabis industry to say, what opportunities do we have to infuse some of what we're learning about how businesses can best impact the environment and how the cultivation of products and plants can best impact the environment, and see if while the cement is still wet in cannabis regulation, we can't infuse some of that directly into policy, but also into the ethos and culture of the industry so that it becomes the norm to seek out sustainable packaging or to use solar power. I think that the time is right to look at how cannabis regulation can inform environmental policy.
So, yeah, number one, push for regulation to just have this be a beacon of environmentalism, this industry. But if policy doesn't get there first, at least demanding that of ourselves, meaning the corporate enterprises here in cannabis, making sure that we are built on a foundation of environmentalism. You mentioned while the cement is still wet, I would argue that that should be hempcrete, but that's a different conversation for another time.
That's another chapter.
So, okay, fine. Instilling this in the ethos. How easy is that to do? How difficult is that to do? We can see a traditional industry example, as you said, off the grid. You know, how difficult is it to just kind of retool what we've already done in places like Colorado, kind of reimagine what we've done in places like California, and then start anew in other environments?
Well, I think what's helpful is to visualize where we want to get to. So we want to get to a place where cannabis cultivation is causing as little impact on the grid as possible, where it is bringing the most benefit to the land in which it's farmed as possible. So if we want to get to that as an outcome, we can identify the current policies and structures that are getting in the way of that. One of them being the fact that we can't ship cannabis across state lines. And what that does is it forces states like Colorado that may not have the best environments for producing cannabis to make large indoor grow operations. We see states like Michigan, Illinois. These should not be producing states, and yet they're going to be forced to produce their own cannabis because we cannot ship cannabis in from places where we can grow it with a much less of energy consumption. So I think that we have to identify those barriers, and then we have to push policies forward that are going to help those barriers fall. At the same time, we're not reinventing the wheel here. And I really want to encourage people that are just now getting into this industry and are having this question about, well, how do we make people understand that the environmental piece is so important and there's too much packaging and, you know, there's too much energy consumption? Go back to where this all started. The whole back to the land movement, the whole idea that folks wanted to be less of a burden on the environment and to grow their own food and to grow collectively as small communities and include cannabis in that, that history is there. That history is written. So I think that we don't have to kind of build on top of that some kind of new ethos or culture. We have to look back at the culture that birthed this movement, which then birthed this industry. And if we take our cue from that, I think the answers are already all there. We just have to be able to take what was happening in a very kind of generic way, and we have to be able to institutionalize it in this new reality.
Institutionalizing environmentalism, reducing, if not eliminating, our carbon footprint from the cannabis economy. So sounds like a bold goal. Sounds achievable based on what, and how you've laid out what you've laid out. I feel like this is a successful maiden voyage, Amanda. Miss anything?
Miss anything. Okay, one more thing.
Yes.
So I always think it's important to give the consumer something to think about or that they do. So if someone is listening to this and they're like, well, I want to support the environmentally friendly practices in the cannabis industry, how do I do that? How do I select that product? And I would say ask the questions, look for packaging that's recyclable or compostable. If you find a product that you feel went way overboard with packaging, think about that when you're making your decisions. When cannabis, you're buying flower or other products, find out where it's being cultivated. What is the carbon footprint of that company? And again, if you're in Colorado, you may not have much of a choice, but vocalize that and call it out as a problem, because we have to have consumers saying, I love cannabis, but I do not want to harm the earth. It's the reason I bring my own bags to the grocery store. And so I think that we have to be able to have the consumer push and the industry push. And then in the middle, hopefully we'll meet.
And that brings me back as a postscript almost to what you said earlier, which is this, recycling thing that we've been doing, from a person-to-person perspective hasn't had the impact that we wanted it to. We can still kind of, for those that care about this kind of thing, can still be the tail wagging the dog with the voting of the dollars of the, enterprises that provide you the products, either inside of cannabis or outside.
Absolutely.
All right. One last question, Amanda. How's the back?
The back is doing well. I am the owner of 4 beautiful screws that are now holding me together.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And of course, very fortunate to be here in California, where I was able to use great THC and CBD products post-surgery instead of opiates. And my nurse at the hospital actually remarked that I was taking way fewer opiates than the average patient after this type of surgery. And it's definitely because I have access to the THC and CBD. So another reason for folks out there to advocate, cannabis is totally fun and it's amazing and fun, but it's also a necessity for so many people.
Yeah, and let's dive in there because we have this opportunity to talk about cannabis as medicine. So let's, can you explain exactly how you are using THC to, kind of deal with your pain?
Sure. So I am currently using 3 different types of products because, the method of ingestion is going to impact the effect. So I have a baseline of THC in my system at all times that I keep there using a gel cap. That is actually a THC distillate. And I'm usually not a fan of distillates and isolates. I'm a full spectrum kind of gal, but I was really looking for a very specific effect of pain suppression. So I was targeting that with 50 milligram gel caps. I was also using a THC tincture and a CBD tincture because under the tongue administration gives you about a 5 to 10 minute onset. So for inflammation or itching, I had an allergic reaction to the bandages. CBD was great for that. And then I also was vaping. I wasn't smoking because I was concerned about coughing and I didn't want to bust a screw. So I was using, we busted out the good old Volcano. And I was using inhalation as a way to just kind of really take the edge off. And, you know, I found 3 weeks after surgery, I'm dwindling down on the gel caps, and really just using the inhalation as needed. So it was extremely effective, and I didn't have any side effects.
Look at that.
Great.
Fantastic. All right. So gel caps plus sublingual tinctures plus
Inhalation.
Just a little bit of inhalation, and then kind of keep the inhalation going to sunset everything that you need for the back.
Yep. That's what I did.
And really, congratulations on the screws. Not everybody has them, so you're yet again unique, Amanda Reiman.
Yes, what can I say? Now I have to be personally patted down every time I fly through an airport.
Fantastic. Great for you. I feel like we got something going here with Catalyst, so thank you so much for doing this one. I can't wait for the next one already.
Sounds great.